The scar ran from Zira's left temple down to her jaw, a jagged lightning bolt of discolored chitin that marked her as defective among the Krell. In their society, where genetic perfection was not just valued but mandated by ancient custom, such a disfigurement was tantamount to exile. The wound had come from a plasma conduit explosion during her adolescence aboard the colony ship Infinite Horizon, a random accident that had sealed her fate among her own kind. She sat alone in the observation deck of Terminus Station, the massive orbital platform that served as a trading hub for 17 different species. Through the reinforced, transparent aluminum, she watched ships arrive and depart, their fusion drives painting temporary constellations against the infinite dark. Her four-fingered hands traced the scar unconsciously. A habit formed over cycles of rejection. The Krell were a proud species, their exoskeletons naturally forming intricate patterns that they believed reflected inner worth. Zira's scar disrupted those patterns, creating asymmetry where there should be balance. Potential mates had turned away. Employment opportunities had evaporated. Even her own clutch siblings had distanced themselves, afraid that association with her would taint their own standing. So she had left. Terminus Station accepted everyone, asked no questions, and offered anonymity in its sprawling corridors that housed over 2 million souls from across the galactic arm. Here, she worked as a quantum computation specialist, her mind, the one part of her people couldn't judge, finding solace in mathematics and the clean logic of subatomic particles. The door to the observation deck hissed open. Zira didn't turn, assuming it was another visitor seeking solitude or spectacle. But then she heard something unexpected. Humming. A tuneless, cheerful sound that seemed entirely at odds with the cold vacuum beyond the windows. Curiosity overcame her usual reticence. She turned. The human was tall by her species' standards, with dark skin and close-cropped hair. She wore a maintenance tech's jumpsuit, tools hanging from her belt, and a smile that seemed to exist independent of circumstance. When their eyes met, Zira's compound eyes with their thousands of facets meeting the human's simple binocular vision, something fundamental shifted in Zira's chest cavity. The human didn't look away, didn't flinch, didn't let her gaze slide to the scar and then politely avert as so many others had. "Beautiful view," the human said in passable galactic standard, her accent marking her as someone who had learned the language later in life rather than through neural imprinting. Zira's mandibles clicked in surprise. No one had addressed her so casually in... she couldn't remember how long. "Yes," she managed, her translator converting her native clicks and whistles into standard. "I come here to think. Mind if I join you?" The human was already walking toward the window. "Just finished a 12-hour shift recalibrating the station's gravity generators. My brain feels like it's been through a blender, but in a good way, you know? That kind of tired where you've actually accomplished something." Zira found herself shifting to make room, though there were dozens of other viewing spots available. Yes. Of course." The human extended her hand, a gesture Zira had learned meant greeting or agreement among humans. "Lieutenant Commander Amara Okafor. Most people just call me Amara. Engineering Corps on loan from the Terran Exploratory Fleet." Zira touched her own hand to Amara's, feeling the warmth of mammalian blood through soft skin, so different from her own chitinous exterior. "Zira, quantum computation specialist, freelance." "Quantum comp? Damn, that's impressive. I can barely wrap my head around the basics, and I've got 2 degrees in applied physics." Amara laughed, a sound like water over stones. "I'm more of a hit-it-with-a-wrench-until-it-works kind of engineer." Despite herself, Zira's mandibles spread in what her people considered a smile. "I have found that approach to be surprisingly effective in certain circumstances." They stood together in companionable silence, watching a Valurian cargo hauler dock with the station's outer ring. Zira was acutely aware of Amara's presence beside her, the sound of her breathing, the slight scent of ozone and synthetic lubricants that clung to her jumpsuit, the way she shifted her weight from foot to foot as if unable to remain completely still. "That's a hell of a scar," Amara said suddenly, and Zira's entire body went rigid. Here it came, the polite retreat, the sudden remembering of another appointment, the must have been one hell of a story behind it. Zira's translator struggled with the idiom before catching up. She turned to look at Amara, searching for mockery or pity in those brown eyes. She found only genuine interest. "A plasma conduit explosion," Zira said slowly. "When I was young, it ruined my pattern. Among my people, it makes me—" "Makes you what? Interesting? Unique?" Amara leaned against the window, studying Zira's face with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. "Where I'm from, scars are stories. They're proof you survived something, proof you're still here. That is not how the Krell view such things." "Yeah, well, no offense to your people, but that sounds like their problem, not yours." Amara's smile was fierce now, protective. "You know what I see when I look at you? Someone who understood quantum mechanics well enough to make a career of it. Someone who left their homeworld and made a life for themselves in one of the toughest stations in this sector. Someone brave enough to sit alone in an observation deck and face the infinite head-on." Something warm and unfamiliar bloomed in Zira's thorax, spreading through her entire body. In all her cycles of existence, no one had spoken to her this way. No one had looked past the scar to see what lay beneath. Zira's vocal synthesizer clicked and whirred, struggling to process the cascade of emotions into language. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll let me buy you a drink at the Gravity Well," Amara said. "That bar on level 47 that serves everything from Terran whiskey to liquid methane for the cryons. I want to hear about quantum computation from someone who actually understands it, and maybe you can tell me the story behind that scar if you want to, or we can talk about literally anything else." "I'm easy." Zira looked at this human, this strange, warm, impossibly confident human who had walked into her isolation and treated her like she mattered, and felt something she had thought long dead stirring to life. "Yes," she said, her mandibles spreading wide. I would like that very much." As they walked together toward the observation deck's exit, Zira caught their reflection in the polished metal of the wall. For the first time in her memory, she didn't immediately focus on her scar. Instead, she saw herself walking beside someone who had chosen her company, who had seen her completely and found her worthy of attention. Later, sitting across from Amara in the dim light of the gravity well with a glass of fermented fungus extract in her hand, listening to the human explain the finer points of percussive maintenance with animated gestures and infectious enthusiasm, Zira realized something profound. She had been wrong. The scar hadn't made her defective. It had simply made her different. And perhaps that difference, that unique marking that told the story of survival and resilience, was exactly what it took to recognize someone extraordinary when they walked into her life. Amara laughed at something, her hand briefly touching Zira's across the table, and Zira felt the last of her protective walls crumbling. Perhaps, she thought, being rejected by everyone else had simply been the universe's way of ensuring she was available when the right person finally arrived. Perhaps falling in love at first sight wasn't about perfection meeting perfection. Perhaps it was about two imperfect souls recognizing in each other something the rest of the universe had been too blind to see.